Hello Internet, I'm the Disney Brain, and today we're going to be talking about some bad Rangers. But this won't be some hit piece made to dramatically slander the Rangers I personally don't agree with, but rather a discussion. A discussion on what we the fans look for in a Ranger character, and, more to the point, how that ends up affecting how we judge the worst Rangers. That's why the word worst is in quotations, because there's no right or wrong answers necessarily. So let's take this chance to go beyond taglines such as annoying or boring. Let's dig a little deeper and address the why. Why are they any of those things? And perhaps more interestingly, why would person A find one character overbearing, but person B find that same character endearing? So, what am I talking about when I say worst Power Rangers? What it comes down to for me, especially in recent years, is not so much the actor, but more the production team telling the actor what to say and how to say it. Other times, it's a matter of fit. Is there a reason that this particular character is even here, given what the season is built around? Do they have a real role, or are they just filling up the space? But most of the time, there is just not enough character there, which kind of ties back to the first 2 points. And I'd take too much characterization over too little any day of the week, with one noteworthy exception. Not surprisingly, the Rangers of Megaforce, but especially Troy, embody all 3 of these traits. The production team was asleep at the wheel, and what we got was the laziest season ever constructed. Even Andrew Gray wishes that more could have been done with his character. What do we learn about Troy Burrows in the pilot episode? That he exists, and that he can fight. A purely by-the-numbers Ranger if there ever was one. But okay, bad start. Doesn't mean he can't have a great finish. But what do we know about Troy after the fight is over? He is more or less the same character, the same person. He never got to truly grow, because the story was never structured in such a way that allowed it. And that's especially damning for a season like this one, where the pressure to perform as well as the legends could have been overbearing, or rather, should have been overbearing, because that would have been a real hurdle to overcome, and a better season would have done wonders with that simple yet powerful idea of not feeling good enough. Based on my own standard for Ranger quality, characters like Leo or Kruger or Cam check off all the boxes, but Troy can't even find the box. When the production team of any given season is on their game, you can see it through the narratives they construct, and what often ends up happening is that nearly all the characters become at least good because they all have to carry that narrative to its natural conclusion. But when there's no real story structure, the character development doesn't have to build up to anything, so what you get more times than not is a lack of any development. It's so poorly done in Megaforce that even when the Rangers do learn valuable lessons, they are quickly disposed of just one episode later. There's no foundation for progress or advancement. There's no sense of these Rangers will soon be able to stand on their own alongside the legends and not just be compared to them. This created a team of almost exclusively face value characters, except for Noah, who somehow managed to come off exceedingly better than all the others. But even good or great seasons can have characters who just don't add up. Then it's more about the other factors that I touched on. Enter Lucas Kendall, who I personally don't have any issues with, but he's just not a good character in an otherwise incredible season. In a way, his persona does kind of fit the team, if only to balance them out. But I'd be hard-pressed to say he fits this season, since, unlike the other characters, he really is just filling a role. What we got from the other 5 Rangers are episodes that challenge their perceptions of themselves and others, challenge what they thought was clear, and in both subtle and overt ways, it changed all of them for the better. But Lucas never changes, his fling with Nadira notwithstanding. With Lucas, we know a few things about him. He was a racer. He at some point left that life to join Time Force, and he's really obsessed with his hair. The problem is, there is no connective tissue there. We don't know why he gave up racing to serve his community, and it might make for an interesting story, since you'd think a public servant like him would be a little less self-engrossed. Maybe it's just a powerful facade to mask his insecurities, key word being maybe, because we don't really know. He got 4 focus episodes, 2 more than Noah, but Noah had a better sense of personal growth and overcoming his self-image, an especially jarring feat, considering Time Force's character writing was almost spot on at every juncture. Noah found a way to be a pretty good Ranger, despite the mess surrounding him, but Lucas was just the opposite. Lucas never really connects to the Changing Your Destiny theme, because he never once does. You could argue that he affects Dash, but again, there's no sense of lasting impact or continual buildup, as there had to be for someone like Jen. Now let's discuss 2 Rangers that dedicated viewers of this channel will know all too well. Jesus of the Sheba clan, and our resident asshat. But before we go any further, I should clarify something. I don't hate any of the Rangers we're talking about today. Do I have several points to make against them? Yes, but hate them I do not. Like I said, I don't want this to be some kind of roast session. I'd much rather this be a real conversation regarding what didn't work about these characters, and why you, the viewers, might agree, disagree, or have similar issues with other characters not named here. My biggest point against both Rangers is that they never really learn. With Jaden, he was training with Mentor G on his own for a while. Because of that, it makes sense as to why he'd struggle to lead a team initially. It makes sense that in the first episode, he'd be more comfortable going solo for a lot of that battle. I wouldn't call it the greatest entry point, but it is a logical one. And from there, developing his team chemistry seems like an easy, almost overly obvious route to take, and Samurai does try to do that. They force Jaden to see that working together is the best way to eventually win. That's good. But in typical Neo Saban fashion, he forgets that lesson and has to relearn it constantly. That's bad. He never really takes the initiative to become closer to his team either, but that's not all on him, since even his mentor never really challenges him like other better mentors have done in other better seasons. That, on top of the fact that the others, especially Kevin, already see Jaden as in a class all his own, contribute to this worship culture. I've mentioned before that the best leaders in Rangers don't really see a pecking order. When Jason came back and reassured Tommy that he wouldn't take control, Tommy insisted that the team was made of equals anyways. Great Rangers start with that understanding, or eventually learn it. Jaden says he needs his friends. Jaden says Samurai forever, but it's hard for me to believe him. Especially since as soon as Lauren shows up, his first thought is to reenact Boulevard of Broken Dreams, and then jump into yet another one-on-one fight with Decker. He literally learned nothing, and he knew that Lauren would show up eventually, and if he told the others, hey, look guys, I'm not even the most important person in my own family, so please, don't kiss the ground I walk on, he becomes far more relatable. That really is on the writers, because everything about this show only adds to Jaden's sense of self-importance. It's a rare case where most of the season doesn't fit into the grander narrative of Power Rangers, a franchise that emphasizes teamwork and where the worshipping is only ever done on the evil side of the conflict. But here, a pair of villains find a way to have the strongest bond of the season, while every Ranger not named Jaden is treated as more of a side character. Now let's discuss Nick Russell. Nick is a unique character. He's a unique Ranger. There's a couple of you who defend this guy, and I'll grant you those points. However, different doesn't automatically equate to good, and here's why. Nick could have been an incredible character. His lack of emotional and familial stability is a great idea. The problem is everything after that. We don't get so much as a flashback to his negligent adoptive parents or anything regarding his upbringing, so Mystic Force is basically telling us that those things don't matter. But his horse? That matters a lot, apparently. When I talk about things like themes and narratives, they aren't just random fan theories I cook up in an underground lair. Usually. This show, and really all shows, often directly inform you of what matters most based on what they choose to focus on. It's what I'm talking about when I say things like Summer and Dylan's relationship is made to matter. But with Nick, you can't really make that same argument. Otherwise, there might have been more attention paid to his relationship with Udana. They would have built a story that allowed Nick to feel more at peace, specifically because she saw something in him and him her. But instead, just like Jaden, they made it so that anytime he's tested, he constantly fails to be anything more than who he's always been. He's not as flat an actor at least, but even still, there's no sense of growth, to the point where even his best moment in Dark Wish is still murky, because we know that Nick is the kind of guy to fight everyone, regardless of context. So doing so again, after he refuses to take even a little bit of blame for the state of things, doesn't strike me as having really learned, let alone changed. It's practically the opposite of the brilliant way SPD developed Sky. SPD and Mystic Force are very different seasons, of course, and I don't bring up Sky to say that Mystic Force should have done exactly that with Nick, but Nick is a peculiar character, because every character placed in a similar position has either needed to sit in the back seat for a bit, as Sky did, or said Ranger would actively improve himself to fit the role he's now in. See Jack, Leo, Casey, Wes, and Scott eventually. I'm not saying that Nick should be forced to better fit in with those other Red Rangers, all of whom are very different in their own ways. What I'm saying is that Mystic Force didn't do the best job at making his plight matter. we end up learning more about Xander's struggles than Nick's, and we also see exponentially more growth from him. We can then surmise that Mystic Force is telling us that Xander is the more pivotal one, because he's the one that gets the lion's share of training from Daggeron. He's the one who thinks of himself as a leader, then has to prove it. He's the one who does prove it and gets rewarded in the end. He's the one who's at the center of it all, when the realms of magic and humans finally come together. And when the situations are most dire, it's usually everyone but Nick stepping up and revealing new layers and levels of understanding. It's great for the other Rangers, but at the same time, it's confusing, because in terms of important milestones, Nick doesn't get a whole lot. Even his real parents being revealed to him doesn't really do much, and how could it? It was one of the last things to happen that season. Whether it's a bad, good, or great season, some characters simply don't grow in a way that fits the story, or don't grow at all. Generally speaking, that's how I figure out who I think the worst Power Rangers are, because from where I'm standing, the worst Rangers aren't the ones who have some arbitrary trait that rubs people the wrong way, like being a loudmouth or being a kid. No, I think the worst Power Rangers are the ones the story refuses to care about. And as a result, we the audience aren't given many reasons to care either. But that isn't to say that any of these characters are deplorable, because despite all of that, they can all still connect with someone. And despite my points for certain Rangers, there will always be those who can't connect to them too. In line with that, I'll end by giving you some personal examples, Rangers where it's harder to explain things as logically. Joel Rawlings. Why? I'm not entirely sure. I don't find him very pleasant, but he's not all bad. I think it's just that Chris Tucker forced humor vibe he gives off, maybe, but I'm sure some people find him hilarious. With Sid, I just can't relate to her, and with Will, part of it has to do with Samuel Benta reportedly being a real-life thief too. I recognize that it might be unfair, but it puts an unfortunate, yet fitting, spin on my perception of a character I already didn't like. But the real point of this video is to open the floor to all of you. You've heard what I think makes a Ranger bad, but I want to hear what you think. From your perspective, what do you look for in a Power Ranger? And in your eyes, why would a Ranger fail as a character? This should go without saying, but let's keep the unavoidable debate civilized. If I can go an entire video without yelling at Nick, or at least not obnoxiously so, then all of us can have tempered discussions about a potentially heated topic. And then, if enough people want it, I'll discuss the positive version of this topic and break down what I think makes a great Ranger down the line. And speaking of Ranger topics, Part 3 of Chronic Storm is now up on fanfiction, and if you thought Part 2 was crazy, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. And as per usual, the links will be in the description and the comments down below. And thank you again to everyone who's read and commented on the journey so far. I can't tell you how great it's been sharing this passion project with all of you. And if you haven't joined in the fun yet, plenty of room aboard the train. And as always, thanks for watching.